lab or many other labs could generate the mutants in a few weeks given several $1,000s for gene synthesis. He went on to say, I remain agnostic about what is the best policy going forward. I recognize that there's also important potential benefits from this research and think that the research along these lines does have valid scientific and public health justifications. But these benefits need to be carefully weighed against the real risk, and I am definitely concerned that there has been a rush to judgment for full publication within our own research community. We heard that message loud and clear from a number of influenza researchers. And so it is, we're urging that there is not a rush to judgment, that in fact we really spend the time and the effort in careful deliberations, and that's what we believe the NSAB has started that process. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. We're going to turn the podium over to Dr. Tony Fauci now. Tony.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to go as quickly as possible through this because I really feel we need to get some chance to have some discussion. So I'm going to focus fundamentally on the government response to the recommendations and the subsequent events, but I also want to give a really brief background about why we feel at the NIH, why these studies are important. It really goes back several years when we first became really quite aware of the threat of pandemic influenza. This was a government-wide involving CDC, FDA, the department, and the NIH and other agencies to develop a strategic pandemic influenza preparedness plan. As you see here, it involves multiple components from surveillance through research, including vaccines, antivirals, communications, etc. At the NIH, as many of you know, our research agendas with influenza include a variety of issues going from fundamental basic research to clinical research and focusing on the development of therapeutics, vaccines, and diagnostics. This has been accompanied by a very robust increase in the resources allocated to influenza. As you see here, we went from a relatively small amount, and then when you had the real acceleration of interest in the H5N1, particularly in Southeast Asia and Northern Africa, we had a major increase in our influenza. This flatness of the curve just reflects everything that's gone into the NIH over the last several years. With that, the influenza basic research, we'll put aside clinical trials, we'll put aside therapeutics, and look at what we do for basic research. As you can see, it involves issues from viral evolution, immune response, pathogenesis, molecular analysis, but particularly and importantly, the work that you just heard from Dr. Fouché, namely host adaptation and transmissibility, which is actually the aim of the studies that were done. And as Dr. Fouché